Hello and welcome along to the third episode of the SBK Betting Podcast, and I'm really pleased to be joined again by George Baker, racing pundit, and Tom Collins from the Racing Post. Today we're going to be looking ahead towards Newmarket this Saturday, where there's more Group 1 action, and we're going to dissect in this episode the Dewhurst Stakes for the 2-year-olds over 7 furlongs. That's at 2:55 on Saturday. We're also going to have a look at the Autumn Stakes, the Group 3 over the mile for the juveniles at 2:20. We're then going to have a good look at the big staying handicap, the Cesarwitch, which is at 3:35. And then we'll end on the Darley Stakes, which features the return of none other than Barney Roy. So a lot to look forward to. We've got some cracking weekends ahead of us of racing again, more Group 1 action. The Godolphin Blue are going to be out in full force again. They really are dominating this season, and Charlie Appleby is trying to edge closer to Andrew Balding in terms of the Trainers' Championship as well, which will come to a head on Champions Day next weekend. But the Dewhurst Stakes this weekend is the race that we've seen essentially future stallions made. You know, St Mark's Basilica was the winner last year, Pinatubo 2 years ago, Churchill's won this, Dawn Approach. It's really been the 2-year-old race to give a good eye as to what, you know, 3-year-olds and Guineas horses there might be for next season. Native Trail comes into this race unbeaten for the Appleby team, Tom, and he looks pretty bomb-proof as well. And is he the real deal? Could he turn into their next Adiyar, their next big thing?
I think so. I was at Sandown for his debut. I was actually stood alongside paddock judge Ken Pitterson, who we've seen on ITV a few times. And we both saw Native Trail in the paddock, and he just took the eye. He was the best horse in the paddock by a country mile, and he proved that on the track. Now, he showed inexperience first time up at Sandown, but he really found his stride in the closing in the final furlong. He's a big scopy sort, and he was obviously going to improve for each start this year. I thought his superlative victory was really impressive. That race has worked out well. And then last time out in the National Stakes, he beat a horse in Point Lonsdale, who I thought was probably going to win the 2,000 Guineas next year. Well, if Native Trail turns up in the 2,000 Guineas, there's no way that form is going to be reversed. Native Trail is going to improve more than Point Lonsdale, in my opinion. And you know what? He's probably the most likely winner at Newmarket next year already. He's a short price for the Dewhurst, rightly so. But I think I want to take him on with one at a bigger price, Jess.
Oh, we love that. I'm fascinated to know, because I've got one at a bigger price that I think has been overlooked. So let's hear it.
Well, the way my brain works during the flat season is I try and watch as many races as I can, and then only a few races stick with me throughout the whole year, and I want to follow that form. One of those races is the Acomb. Now, only 5 runners turned up for this year's Acomb. It was won by Royal Patronage, massive shock, 25-1. But Royal Patronage went on to beat Caribus next time. We're going to talk about Caribus coming up. The race, I think, is going to work out really well. Eraz, who finished 5th, returned lame. I think he's a smart horse. We're also going to talk about another horse coming up, Imperial Fighter, who finished 2nd. The horse that finished 3rd that race, Dubawi Legend. Hugo Palmer thinks a lot of this horse. He ran at Doncaster on debut, won by five lengths. Really impressive, beating a horse called Brazil Power. That race has produced multiple subsequent winners. I thought in the Acomb, he ran really nicely. He travelled to the front and looked the most likely winner. With about 2 furlongs to go, but I don't think the long straight at York suited him. His effort petered out in the closing furlong. He eventually faded into 3rd. I think that Acomb form is good. Now, he's only rated 97. He has plenty of weight to find with the likes of Native Trail in here, and he probably won't beat Native Trail. But if there are the dead 8 runners, which there currently are, I think he's a good each way bet at around 16-1.
Interesting. Not the one that I was going to mention, but Dubawi Legend does obviously have a lot. I know that it was so punchy about him after Doncaster, saying the best 2-year-old that they have and all of this. But as I say, the Royal Patronage form has worked out well, but it was a very flat run. What did you make of him, George, in terms of his profile? And can you forgive him for that last run, looking ahead to this after a bit of a break as well?
I would have thought so. I was at York that day when he got beaten, and I know the Hugo Palmer's team really, really rate this horse. And he was, as Tom was saying, at Doncaster first time out, he looked freakishly good. And I felt at York, whether it was a long straight or whatever Tom says he feels it may be the track, I just felt he wasn't on his A game that day. He's had a bit of time now, and I'm sure they've regrouped, learned from that. And he's a beautiful looking individual, and it wouldn't be a massive shock if he runs a really solid race in this race, but he needs to improve what we've seen. I think he's as he was going to be my each way tip in the race for sure, because Hugo Palmer's not someone who gets too carried away, and the way he talks, when you see him talking about this horse, you obviously know that his homework is exceptionally good, and I think there's more to come from him for sure. But I think the favourite, Native Trail, to get beaten in this race will have to from what we've seen of him today, he will have to underperform to be beaten.
Yeah, you have to say so. Although interestingly, I heard an interview with Charlie Appleby. He was asked the question, "Who's your best 2-year-old?" and he was pretty certain that Caribus has been training like his best 2-year-old ahead of Native Trail, which I thought was very interesting. Now, obviously, he's priced up accordingly based on the fact that he's unbeaten from 3 starts. My horse that I like, and resembles similar profile to another horse of Aidan O'Brien's, Gloomthane or Gloomthorn, similarly to Tenebrism, who won the Cheveley Park only a few weeks ago, is coming into this race off the back of a massive break. Last time it ran was in April. Has been, for whatever reason, I don't know if he's had a setback or they've done this on purpose. He's been growing, but he won first time out, beating Castle Star, who's gone on and been a pretty solid 2-year-old this season for Fozzie Stack, and ran a very eye-catching race, I thought, last time out in the Middle Park Stakes. Now, obviously, he comes in with a bit of inexperience, and he's got to step up an extra furlong as well. But Aidan O'Brien has shown he can do this with horses like Tenebrism, and I think he might be a double-figure price as well. So that's my angle into it. Another son of Kodiak, who's got couple of other runners in this race as well. So he's an interesting one that shouldn't be overlooked considering what they did with Tenebrism a couple of weeks ago, I thought. Straight Answers also another one, the other son of Kodiak, that has come in for a lot of attention, guys. Tom, any reason why we shouldn't be considering this horse? Joe Lyons brought another Jubmont horse over Sacred Bridge a couple of weeks ago, who really bombed out. It was quite disappointing that day.
Yeah, Joe Lyons hasn't got a very good record, surprisingly, with his runners in Great Britain, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds or older horses. Straight Answer was really impressive last time at Fairyhouse. I don't know what he beat. He's probably quite a weak field. He's going to have to improve again to trouble the likes of Native Trail. I think there are better each-way plays in the race.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, for both Tom and George, it sounds like Dabawi Legends is a bit of an each-way play, but Native Trail, the solid favourite, and I like Gloomthane for the Coolmore team in the colours of Mrs. Stockwell, JP Magnia's, John Magnia's, mother. So those famous colours. We will head into and move on from the Dewhurst Stakes. Looking ahead, there's a massive day of racing, and the next race we're going to look at is another 2-year-old race, the Autumn Stakes, over a mile. Now, these horses as well, similar profiles, a lot of the form sort of links into each other. And some of these horses also have entries for the Guineas come next year as well, which currently Native Trail heads the market for the Guineas anti-post SBK at 9-2. Caribus, as it stands with SBK, is a 9-1 shout. And as I mentioned, Charlie Appleby's been very punchy about this horse. What happened, George, from a jockey's perspective? What happened in the Royal Lodge last time? What happened in terms of William Buick's perspective in this race? Because it's fascinating to try and unpick.
Well, I don't think it is that fascinating. I think he rode him like a horse who was going to be raw and green under pressure when he let him down. And when he gave him a squeeze, he completely lit up, and he just used himself too soon. And that stiff finish at Newmarket, he was just caught out late on and folded up. I think he's a horse who's shocked Charlie and William how much he's improved in a short period of time. He's obviously given them really good signs at home, but I think William approached a race that he wanted to use his stride and let him go on, and I think he was unaware of how quick he's gone. And not that I've ridden many really, really good horses at this level, but I kind of feel
George.
No, I know, well, get the violin out, but I think William obviously didn't feel like he was going that quick, but when you watch it back, it's easy when you're sat on the sofa to say he just let him go too soon, and he would have learnt from it, digest it and move on. And I think they've got a really smart horse on their hands.
So in terms of tactics-wise and how William Buick might approach a race like this, knowing that this is a horse that kind of surprised him from the front, would he opt to be just not as handy with him? What would you do from a jockey's point of view?
Well, rhythm is so important in these types of races, and I feel he won't be like ripping the head off him and taking him back from the gates. He will just keep things nice and smooth, and he'll use his run later. That's all he's got to do, is keep his powder dry, keep that conservative, even rhythm early doors for a longer period of time, and just trust that when he needs him to get him out of trouble and quicken up, as good horses do, he'll do that.
Yeah, interesting. There could be a bit of pace on. I know that United Nations, the Coolmore horse went on from the front when he won first time out. And, it's a good deep field as well. So there might be a little bit more going forward. Tom, from your perspective, Caribus, looked like a freak last time. He comes back after only 2 weeks off the track to kind of make amends for that. But he's obviously shown to be a horse of real high quality. Can he be beaten?
I think he can be beaten. Saying that he is the most likely winner of the race. He beat 4 subsequent winners on his debut on the July course. Last time out, I think William Buick was forced to go to the front because Royal Patronage just couldn't keep his speed going. Obviously, he stayed on well in the final furlong when he met the rising ground, stiff finish, and repassed Caribus. But Caribus's final section of 13.11 seconds is pretty slow. Between 2 furlongs and 1 furlong out, he showed great acceleration, 11.45 seconds. So there's a big difference there in your sectionals. He strikes me very much like a horse in the same mould as Pinatubo. I don't think he's going to be necessarily the Guineas winner next year. I'd prefer Native Trail, although he's probably a Derby horse. Look, he's a very talented horse. He'll be suited by a lead in this race. He is the horse to beat. But again, I'm going to stick with the Acomb form and take him on.
Interesting. Well, Charlie Appleby, Saibim are responsible for the last 2 winners. They've both been in the Godolphin Blue. And in fact, the Godolphin's record in this race is pretty bomb-proof over the last few years. Gaiath, obviously a winner, Best Solution as well. What about the Aidan O'Brien horses? Because the 2-year-olds, George, in general, bar Tenebrism, who looked brilliant when she won the Cheveley Park, they've not set us alight. Obviously, we've seen Point Lonsdale, we've seen him get beaten as well. We've seen Luxembourg, he's sort of come out the woodwork a little bit, and they might be striking a little bit of form. Should we take a bigger and a better view at some of these Coolmore horses, because they are pretty nice prices? United Nations, Scriptwriter, we don't know a huge amount about them, but we know that Aidan O'Brien doesn't send 2-year-olds over for these races for no reason.
No, and I think they're always prepared to roll the dice, aren't they, when they've got a team they're trying to find stallions every year. But I think Aidan, I watched him being interviewed recently, and he went through a period of time there a month or so ago where the horses weren't disappointing, but they just weren't winning. And he felt that they just weren't in a really rich vein of form. And I feel that that's turning the corner now, and ignore his horse at your peril. I think it's always, they've got such a strong, deep team of individuals. You've just got to, and I think it's important this time of year to see. We chatted about this the last time we were on together, Jess, that you've got to see them in the paddock, see what's looking well, because you're getting to that time of year where the weather's changing. Horses have sort of had long seasons, or they might be growing and just become a little bit on the weak side. So especially with these later developing 2-year-olds, just go and see them and watch TVs and see them in the paddock and form an opinion of how you feel they're looking.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there have been some yards as well that have been consistently in serious form, and the Andrew Balding team, they have not stopped since day one. They had a little bit of a quiet patch over the last couple of weeks, but they've had sort of 3 winners over the last few days. So Imperial Fighter for you, Tom, looks like a horse that can uphold that Acomb form. George, where are you sitting with this race, and how do you see it panning out essentially?
So I'm going to take on Charlie's horse because I feel, I just feel he showed loads of speed last time when he got beaten at Newmarket, and as Tom said, those sectionals proved that point. He was folding up, and I know they feel he'll get the mile no problem, but I'd have preferred to see him over 7 furlongs his next start. I really like the horse of Roger Varians that won at Newbury. He only beat a 79 rated individual on that occasion when breaking his maiden, a horse called Dubai Poet, son of Luke de Vega, who showed with plenty of promise first time, hacked up, won as you like at Newbury last time, and that was 21 days ago. And I just think he's again got one of those profiles of a horse who's just going to continue to improve. He's been lightly raced to date, and what he ends up being is an unknown, but I just love the way he conducts himself at Newbury, and I think this is going to be sort of nice, good soft ground. I would have thought Newmarket, and it should be perfect for him.
Yeah, I can see the case for him as well. I found this race really tricky to unfold as well. If Caribus I think he could be beatable. I think he will be too short. And Dubai Poet, as you say, might just go slightly under the radar. His win last time looked pretty smart, so he's entitled to give a race like this a go. So the Autumn Stakes, a bit of a tricky puzzle. Horses for the future, middle distance type horses, type pedigrees as well going forward. So very, very interesting all the same. The day gets a little bit more tricky from there on in. The Cesarwitch comes up at 3:35, over 2 miles, 2 furlongs. This is a race that's been dominated by Willie Mullins. He's thrown in plenty of horses into this renewal again. Burning Victory, the Cheltenham Festival winner. MC Muldoon, a Galway Festival winner. He's also got Great White Shark and Foveros and Whiskey Sour. So he's really throwing a lot of darts at this race, as he always likes to do. Nicky Henderson has a certain horse called Buzz that he's entered in the race as well, to give it a go back in Black Company. It's always a fascinating race. George, I'll come to you first, because we know that when you were claiming in the year 2000, so I don't know if Tom was born then,
I was 5.
21 years ago.
What I love about this, Tom, is how happy Jess Stafford's got this stat out, proving how old I am.
She's lined us up all day, George, you know it.
You can't have been much more than 10 or 11 yourself. It must have been. I don't know how they allowed you to be claiming in 2000, but you did, and you were second in this race. First of all, memories of that, because that must have been some feat, coming second in a race like this, which is so unique in its setup, and it's so competitive and has so much heritage to it.
Yeah, so I got the ride because it had a very light weight, and I was tiny when I was claiming, and it was for Jeff Pearce. It was a horse called Wave of Optimism. He was a proper galloper, and we hit the front a long way from home. And I probably may well, in hindsight, got going too soon, but we got beaten by Martin Pipe Gamble, who's ridden by Gary. I think it was Gary Carter rode the horse, and yeah, it was my sort of first taste of riding in a bigger handicap, and I absolutely loved it.
It is a race, as I say, dominated by the jumps trainers, because they're trying to expose these jumpers. They're trying to make most of their handicap marks, obviously, on the flat, which can be a lot less than their jumps marks, where they're going to have to play at bigger levels. So we're looking at it now. MC Muldoon, he ran a very good race at Royal Ascot, Tom. Buzz, who comes into it off the back of a long break, ran at Aintree in the Grade 1, ran a very good race as well. Is well in at the weights because of that, because he hasn't ran on the flat for a long time. But Calling the Wind is probably the one sort of flat horse who's been running in the big flat staying races this season, was very eye-catching at Newbury for Richard Hughes last time out. And also on top of that, Live Your Dream, who ran great in the Cesarwitch trial. So I'm just throwing out some names there, and there's obviously a huge amount. I think there's 36 runners in total. What have you picked out of this pile?
Well, as you've mentioned, Willie Mullins has farmed this race in the last 3 years. MC Muldoon figures to be his number one string after finishing second in the Ascot Stakes. I think he probably should have won that race. Ryan Moore's booked again on jockey bookings. He looks the number one string, and he's probably going to be favourite. I think the fact that Ryan's on gets rid of the juice in the price with him. I want to look elsewhere. Burning Victory is going to be my selection for Willie Mullins. Now, I think this has been the plan for the whole of the summer. This is the autumn target for Burning Victory before she goes hurdling again. She's a dual-purpose performer. She won on the flat in France for a former trainer, and then was tried in Group 3 company on just her 5th start. So clearly she was training well at home. They thought quite a bit of her. She moved to Willie Mullins. She won a Grade 3 at Fairy House, then won the Triumph. Unfortunately, she wouldn't have won that race if Goshen stood up, but Goshen unseated Jamie Moore at the last, and Burning Victory came through and won the race. She's a very good dual-purpose performer, as I mentioned, but this year her 2 flat runs have come in France, which I think is very intriguing, trying to keep that handicap mark. She's also been extremely impressive both times, and last time out at Deauville, she made every yard and was at her best in the final furlong. She hit the line powerfully. She has assured stamina. She will get this trip, no problem. There are horses in here that I don't think will stay. Calling the Wind is one. I know he's done well in big field handicaps this year, but he travels so nicely, he just doesn't find too much off the bridle. I don't think if he gets into a battle late on, he'll be winning this race. But Burning Victory has a brilliant mix of tactical speed, assured stamina, and the class to win this race. And I think a mark of 98 with the brilliant William Buick on board makes her the best bet in this race at a double-figure price.
Very interesting. Yeah, I thought those quite shrewd race planning of the Willie Mullins team getting her over to France was very eye-catching. She comes in with a penalty, I think, but she is weighted quite favourably. But, look, I'm going to have to discuss Buzz very quickly. Obviously, he's even better weighted off 8.13. His mark of 96 on the flat, which is he's pretty well in considering his hurdle mark is 155 now. William Buick and Oisin Murphy do battle again. Oisin Murphy's been booked for some time. And look, all I can say is that he's in very good form. This has been our plan for a while, as we wanted to basically make the most of his flat mark before his jumps campaign begins, which will have to be at graded level now, as he's too highly handicapped over the jump. So he's in great form. He's been working very well, and we hope for a good run. This weather has been pretty miserable earlier on in the week. I wish it was the ground that it was at Longchamp on Sunday. He would have loved that. But I'd imagine it will be about good, on the slower side of good by Saturday, and that should be fair enough for all of them. But with 8.13 on his back, he won't know what life is like, considering he's been used to about 2 stone more. So Buzz, I'm hopeful for a big run, but Oisin Murphy on board has probably just reduced his price even more. But look, a fascinating race, as always. Willie Mullins has farmed it over the years, so we'll see if Burning Victory can do it again for Tom as well as Willie. And George, any view from your perspective going into this?
Yeah, well, I just when I was looking through the final decks, I just couldn't get away from Great White Shark. I know she's been off the track for a long time. We know she's fully effective over course and distance, and she's £10 higher when winning this. Was it last year she won it, didn't she? So
yeah,
I just felt I know she's got a break to overcome. She hasn't run for 207 days. And that last one was when disappointing jumping. But we just, like a lot of these horses, when you look at this race, you're thinking, are they going to stay? Is it going to suit? I just think we know with her, this is a good setup for her. Willie Mullins' horses are always uber fit after a break. And I just think she's probably been slightly overlooked. And I think she represents quite a bit of value.
Yeah, she's an interesting one. She's been taken out of a couple of races over the season, over jumps down to the ground, which has been good ground and soft ground. I think she really wants a lot of give in it. So see how that might suit her, but definitely been probably aimed for this again with Shamie Hessenden on board, which is a good jockey booking. Okay, that's the Cesarwitch puzzle we hope that we can try and sort out. Looking ahead, the final race of the day, guys, Newmarket has an old friend to many returning to the track after 391 days off. And that is Barney Roy. He makes a long-awaited reappearance in the Darley Stakes in the 445. Great to have him back, Tom. This is probably a bit of a pipe opener for a winter campaign outside of these shores.
Yeah, it's brilliant to have him back. He's now a 7-year-old. He was a fantastic horse for Richard Hannon, and now obviously for Charlie Appleby. He has returned from long breaks before. We went to stud, didn't he, originally, and then came back to race again after 500 odd days off, and he reproduced his best. He finished second at Ascot on his reappearance, then won a listed race at Longchamp. So there is the odd chance that Barney Roy may come back and make a winning reappearance, which will be great. He's been a brilliant horse, and hopefully he retains all of his ability.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing training feat, isn't it, George, to get a horse back on track after breaks, after trying to be a sire that's not worked out, and to continue to do quite well. And I actually think a lot of his form, I think where did he go at some point? He was in Munich at some point, and he won a big Group 1 over there. He's been sort of everywhere, and he always runs a solid race, a bit like Ben Battle in the sense that he's hardy, he's game, he's just such a genuine sort.
Yeah, he's a top class horse, and we chat about him when he was at Hannon's. He was a real deal there, and obviously Godolphin bought him. He went to stud, and that didn't work out for him, unfortunately. he was gelded, and then I was lucky enough to be at Child Appleby's one morning and saw him when he was on the comeback trail, and he retains all his enthusiasm. It's not an easy thing to do. You need a horse with a certain mindset to be able to go to stud and that not work out, and then come back to having the mindset to apply themselves and try on the racetrack again. But he's obviously very straightforward like that. He's in a different league to these horses, in my opinion. You know, he when we saw him winning last time in Baden-Baden, he won the Group 1 over there. He's just a really, really strong type, and even if he's not quite at his best on his first run back, he's still good enough to win this race, in my opinion. And obviously, as you said, Jess, he's got international camp targets later on in the year, and I'm sure the Carnival will be sort of his end goal as such.
He's going to take on another Godolphin Sort and Bedouin Story. He was the kind of shock winner of the Cambridgeshire, and he comes into group company now. But Barney Roy, interestingly, the last time he ran, even though it was last September 2020, he beat none other than Torquato Tasso. He won the race. Torquato Tasso was third that day, so the form's been franked anyway. And it'll be great to have him back on track as a 7-year-old, I think he is. So an interesting contender. The boys in blue, guys, are dominating the betting for most of it, bar the Cesarwitch, pretty much all the races on Saturday at Newmarket. They're just flying, and even the Zetland Stake, they have her feet, they have Goldspur. Tom, it looks like Godolphin are just going from strength to strength, which has also been confirmed in how they've been buying at Tattersalls this week as well.
Yeah, exactly. They had a couple of down years, didn't they, where Aidan O'Brien and the Coolmore team seemed to be dominating everything, but Godolphin have really now, since Massar won the Derby, they've really kicked on. They found a load of talented horses over all distances, from sprinting to middle distances in the classics. They have lots of promising newcomers as well, still to come out this year. There was a horse that ran at Newmarket on Saturday. I think his name was Al Nafir, who finished second. I think he has a big future as well. Charlie Appleby is just an excellent trainer. He's done really well with his targets over in the US as well, sending horses like Altheka, Summer Romance over there, Walton Street, one at Woodbine. He's going to have a brilliant Breeders' Cup as well. So just a phenomenal year for Godolphin. It's probably going to get better this Saturday. I think the Native Trail Caribus double will be very popular among punters.
Absolutely. And look forward to dissecting the Breeders' Cup at some stage with you, Tom, because that is going to be a pretty epic Breeders' Cup championship. And as I say, the turf looks turf races at home and host for the Europeans as we stand. So a lot to look forward to. As you say, that Native Trail Caribus double looks pretty tasty. I think we've come to the end of having a real look at these races, but it'd be great to get a nap from each of you and an each way play as well for the weekend. I'll start with you, George. If you please, we need to redeem ourselves from last week. We don't need to re-mention it, but let's revitalise ourselves and do a little better. What is your nap in your each way for this weekend?
So my best bet for the weekend is I am going to do a Godolphin double, but it's going to be Native Trail and Barney Roy. I just think that both horses turn up on their A game, and Barney Roy's fit and healthy. They're going to be very, very hard to beat. So I think that's a good double. And my each way bet is in the Cesarwitch. I think the Great White Shark is going to be a decent price. And I know you're concerned about the ground, but I think it'll be it's a different kind of ground this time of year, and I think it's going to be safe, good to soft ground, and it should be fine for her.
Brilliant, absolutely, definitely safe ground, definitely nice ground here after a good bit of rain, and the autumnal dewy feeling everywhere helps that as well. Tom, your nap and your each way selection.
Now I've got a question for you, Jess, before I give you my nap. Am I allowed to nap in the US?
Oh gosh.
If not, I've got an English nap as well. So
give it both of them to us, because we'll definitely follow them.
Okay, cool. Right, the US nap is the Vosper Stakes at Belmont Park on Saturday, 7:45. A sprinter called Baby Yoda. Don't think he can be beaten. The English nap would be Burning Victory in Cesarwitch. I just think she's got a great chance. Being prepped for the race. This has always been her target, and Willie Mullins just has a great record. So yeah, Burning Victory at double figure price in the Cesarwitch.
Okay, Burning Victory, and if that doesn't come through to get us out of trouble, we can go to America. And your each way selection, please.
Yeah, the each way selection is Dubai Legend. I think Native Trail probably wins the Dewhurst, but at 20-1 or whatever price Dubai Legend is now, with the dead 8 runners, I think he's got a good chance of hitting the frame.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Right, on to myself. It's a tricky one. I've got my heart and head. I hate napping any of our own horses, but I'm going to have to do it. I have to nap Buzz. He, as I said, he's been trained for this race. He is in brilliant form. Nicky Henderson's horses are in great form as well. And to add to that, his work partner, Impulsive One, has been hacking up every time he runs, and that's a very good sign for how fit Buzz is as well. So I'm very happy with him going into this race. And then outside of that, my each way play will be Gloomthorn for the Coolmore team in the Dewhurst. I think he's overpriced based on what he's done and the form that's been franked left, right and centre. So happy to stick with him. Guys, great to chat to you. Great to dissect what looks to be a great weekend of racing. Plenty to look forward to, and I hope it's successful for both of you guys. Well, thank you very much for joining us again for episode 3 of the SBK Betting Podcast. We'll be back again next week with more special guests as we look ahead to the Champions Day, which finally, after many years, looks like it's going to be good or better ground than most years. So a lot to look forward to then. But thanks to Tom and thanks to George, and best of luck with your weekend selections.